Welcome back. Again, the brain surgery mix-up at the Kenyatta Hospital has opened a can of worms, with doctors and nurses protesting alleged victimization of their colleagues in the name of investigations. Postgraduate trainee doctors who offer 85% of medical services at the referral institution are on strike in solidarity with their colleagues who have been suspended over the controversial surgery. Tonight on The Big Question, we ask, could the matter have been better handled? We talked to the Doctors Union Secretary General, Dr. Ouma Oluga, and Dr. Kizito Asava of the Surgical Society of Kenya. Talk to us, use the hashtag The Big Question. Text us on 22422. Thank you both, gentlemen, for making time for us tonight. I'll take a look at I'll sample your feedback again shortly. On SMS, 22422, Jim says, county governments should wake up. We should not depend on the Kenyatta National Hospital so much. Marisa in Nakuru, administratively, what the Cabinet Secretary did was the right thing. Otherwise, the can of worms could not have been opened. The CEO was known for always refusing there was dot at KNH. Give the CS a chance to do her work. Because some MPs are now calling for the removal of the CS. Are Kenyan doctors this insensitive when they are not striking for money? They are striking in solidarity with doctors who open the skull of the wrong patient. God help Kenya. Okay. David Gure in Langata says, Oluga must stop his selfish defense. Doctors must be held accountable for this grave error. Politics, either from the union or politicians, should not be entertained. I think that is the right place to begin. We have questions from Kenyans about what happens exactly when somebody goes in for a surgery. But let's start with Oluga, just to respond to that text you've read, Oluga. And, I mean, the doctors are now on strike. The union is supporting this, calling for the reinstatement of those suspended during last week's surgery, after last week's surgery. How do you respond to that text first?
I think, first, of course, we have not played any politics as a union. Neither have we done it as individuals. What we have said is that let the system take responsibility. And
by the system, you mean?
Well, I have said before that systems are people, but also systems are processes that have been put in place to deliver a particular product or service. And I think the last time you interviewed me, Hussein, was 3 days before I was jailed. So I think that gentleman is very unfair, because I have gone to community maximum prison trying to correct this system. So I think what I would want him to do is to join us in this conversation. And one of the things I want to say, I know that that's outside of this discussion, but one of the things I want to say is that it's Kenyans, please talk about your healthcare. And it's nice to complain, it's nice to sensationalize it sometimes, but please talk about it. But after talking about it, let's also be open to the discussions about what we have to do about it. It's not it's terms of solution. Okay. It's not enough to complain about it and to blame doctors and to blame nurses and to blame the cabinet secretary and to blame everyone. Sometimes it's enough to say, wait a minute, what is actually the problem, without even involving a person in it. Okay. And we as doctors have been there before. And as just to remind Kenyans, again, I've gone to jail because of that. So even as we discuss these systems, these are the same things that we are talking about. But also to answer that we are not trying to protect everyone, and we are not actually selfish. In fact, we are the only ones, in my own opinion, who are with the healthcare system, who want a better healthcare system, because that's where we make our bread and butter. All right.
For this person who's actually put it so bluntly and saying you're supporting somebody who opened up the wrong person's brain, first, have you established what happened before you support this move?
We have established everything that happened. So
would you, I mean, if you, by establishing what happens means what? You know who did wrong?
Yes.
Or?
No. By establishing what happened is that we have tracked from the patients when they came into Kenyatta and what exactly happened in theater and how the process was taken. Actually,
if you could just tell us what happened from what you've established.
So from what we have established is that 2 patients were admitted on the same day, and 2 of them were unidentified. And when patients are unidentified at Kenyatta National Hospital and many of our healthcare facilities, we call them unknown male African. So if the 2 of them are given the same name, the 2 of them also had sort of similar circumstances, that they were all involved in accidents, and they all, for one reason or another, both needed neurosurgery services. Neurosurgery services does not mean surgery per se. So one was conservative and the other one needed invasive, which is operation. And so they are taken to the ward. And then
the same ward?
The same ward, because the same ward that's admitting. And then in the process of now being taken to theater, is where the mix-up is, you know. And because, you know, their files could have been mixed up, the x-rays could have been mixed up. And that's why we are talking about this issue about barcoding of patients, identification with photographs and all of that. So we have identified what happened. But let me just be quick at something. We have acknowledged that an error occurred. So we are not at the point of saying...
Because you said, and I don't know if you want to chip in on this, Dr. Sava, but you've said you have established what happened in terms of a mix-up. You told us up to the point they went into the ward. After that, you're giving us probabilities that it could be a mix-up of x-rays, a mix-up of documents. If you establish what happened, what exactly was the mix-up that called in the wrong patient?
It is actually a mix-up of the files and x-rays. So what
I've called in the wrong patient?
Yes. So basically, it's this is patient A, this is patient B, and all of your documents are given to me, and all of my documents are given to you.
And just to help you, that patient A is called a non-African male,
and patient
B is called a non-African male. They are both not talking.
And they don't have different people dealing with them.
Yes. And they don't have
people dealing with
and
both of them.
And they don't have relatives.
All right. So now that you've been able to establish what went wrong, we saw 4 people being suspended. You are now against the suspension of one of them. I don't know if it's the 3. They're all the 4, but or one of them, the doctor. There seems, because some are saying there seems to be sacred cows. First, who was the supervising surgeon, and why is the union reluctant to mention his or her name?
Maybe before he comes in,
I think
we need first to say we are not wanting to shield anyone. And the reason why I'm here is you asked me to mention what do we do before, during, and after surgery. So usually there are processes. That's why we're very keen on these systems and processes. A patient is identified, a decision is meant to operate or not to operate. That decision is documented clearly, a consent is signed, and then the plan is made. There's something we call a theater list, which is prepared with the details of the patient sent to the theater. The theater calls for the patient. And when the patient comes in, is received. All along there are different people receiving this patient or passing them on. In the theater, and even if you follow the WHO checklist, there are specific things you check. Is it the right patient, the naming, the condition, the x-rays?
You counter-check before
you cross-check all those things.
If it's the right patient.
If it's the right patient. So if it's a non-African male, you have a non-African male has come in, that's what you do. If it's patient A, it is patient A. You check if their notes are the correct ones, if they need blood. The anesthetist checks, can they withstand the anesthesia or will they not? Those are the key decisions before you even cut. Then the theater team prepares. And that process is also meant to ensure there is safety. So there is the scrubbing, what you call scrubbing, where you have to clean up, you've gowned, you've draped. Everything is meant so that the procedure you're going to do will not do harm to the patient.
Okay.
And then when you go in, that's where we are commending the surgeon. He went in, there are specific things you expect. From medical school to postgraduate to the professors, we are all taught the same things. We read the same books. There are principles of operation. So this surgeon went in, and what he had seen on the x-rays or on the radiographs is not what he found. Yes. And then there are processes you follow. You document. You don't hide it. So when he documents and brings it over, the seniors come and help and see where is the problem. So we have those processes. Then after the operation, patient is made sure that they are awake. They are taken through what we call the recovery area. Somebody is watching over them. Then they are taken to the ward when they are able to be on their own.
Okay.
There is, if the condition worsens, there are meetings you have to hold, what we call morbidity meetings, actually an audit internally.
Right.
Then we have the meeting, if there is a mortality, you hold those meetings.
Okay.
Those are now the things that you check and say, there was a problem here, we need this solution.
Okay.
Yes.
And we're coming to that solution shortly.
Yes.
Let's take a look again at these people who were suspended last week. We won't give any names. It's not like it's not that I'm calling for names.
Yes.
But I'm just saying there was a neurosurgery registrar who was suspended. There's a ward nurse who was suspended. There's a theatre receiving nurse who was suspended, and there's the anesthetist. I'm not asking you to apportion any blame, but
thank you.
From how you are explaining this, the fault here seems to have been at the identification level.
Maybe what we are asking is that audit to proceed.
That's what you say.
It seems to be, that's what you see from outside. Remember, we are not inside.
Usaid,
Yeah.
Let's make it clear. The fault is at identification level. Yeah. So
That's what we think.
That's exactly what...
Meaning no doctor is at fault here? Or are they part of the identification system?
Well, now, what we are looking at is how then do we make better identification?
But I asked your question.
Yes.
Meaning the doctors are not at fault.
Well, you want us... Let me tell you.
I don't want you. I'm asking you.
Can I say something that is very true?
Mm-hmm.
I'm representative of doctors. Doctors elect me, and I work for the union for the welfare of doctors, and to an extent for the protection of doctors. But we don't do this at the expense of the public, because every single doctor, and the union in particular, is very keen to make the healthcare system better. So even though my job is very conflicted, and that's what I'm elected to do, so I think in one way or another, if it is an answer that I'm protecting doctors, that is what doctors have elected me to do, to protect them. So that's what I'll do every day. But I can't do that at the expense of patient care. Yes. Okay. Yes.
Maybe to just chip in,
Yes.
the fact that an error has occurred
does
not remove culpability
on anyone.
So
the team there, isn't it?
We are recommending an audit. That's what we said. If there is a morbidity, a worsening of a condition or an error, you take stock. You stop, then you look what went wrong.
Okay.
Yes.
Because nurses were aggrieved about this. You all saw that. They were really aggrieved about it, and they kept asking questions. For example, who prescribed surgery? Was the surgeon blindfolded when prescribing the surgery?
Yes,
Such questions you saw. Yeah. Was the surgeon blindfolded when operating the patient? Nobody wants to apportion blame.
No one wants to apportion. You don't want to clearly you
I'll leave it at that.
And everybody likes to be on the safe side.
I'll leave it at that. But now
the reason why we do not want to apportion blame, Hussein, and also so that it doesn't look like we are escaping from that question, the reason why we do not want to apportion blame is because if you look at, again, I mentioned to you that we are very well aware of what happened, and we are very well aware also of what happens in Kenyatta on a daily basis. So the nurse that works in casualty is very different from the nurse that works in the ward.
Okay.
The doctor sometimes that's seeing the patient in casualty is very different from the doctor that is seeing patients in the ward. Not necessarily a bad thing, but in the process of transporting these patients, things could happen, and the teams sometimes are different. And that is why, looking at Kenyatta National Hospital, the way it is designed, the way patient flow is, yes, it is sometimes hard to apportion blame. So it is a question that even though you want an answer, and even though the public really wants an answer, it is sometimes difficult to get the answer.
Fine.
So that is the reason why. So that is why everyone is calling for this so-called audit. And an audit is not meant to look at who exactly was wrong. The audit is meant to look at how then do we protect tomorrow when I go to that hospital,
better the systems.
As a patient, how do you make sure that the files that I have from casualty to the ward that I'm going to is the same one, is not mixed up.
Okay.
And our biggest concern, this is brain, you know, someone's head was opened up.
Right.
So it's very gross, and it looks very gross. And it is actually a big problem. But then also our concerns as doctors and as the people who work in that system is, could there be some of these things occurring, but at a lesser extent, maybe mix-up of medication? And that's why we are more even concerned than these people who are baying for blood. Because you could bay for blood for this one person, but then there are also, yes, there are a lot of cases. Okay. So that's why we are interested in this whole system thing, change okay. So that we are sure that our patients are safe moving forward.
I'm going to get that from both of you, how to change the system and how this can be used to change the system to be better. But now that you're talking about the important thing here is not to apportion blame, and the audit is important, and ultimately the important person here we need to take care of is the patient.
Yes.
You are supporting doctors striking now up and above the issue of doctors, lecturers going on strike.
Yes, yes.
But you're supporting those who are doing a strike right now, 85% of the workforce there, the Kenyatta National Hospital,
yes, yes.
because somebody was suspended. Why would you,
Well,
this is hurting the patients, one. And number two, why wouldn't you wait then for that audit to take place? Because it has been done so that an audit can take place. Why don't you just wait for the audit to take place if that is what you're
So the gap here, and let me also take this opportunity to make it very clear for the viewers. The gap that we are talking about is the gap between Kenyatta National Hospital engagement with the University of Nairobi. These doctors who are registrars who are on strike now are engaged by the University of Nairobi on training. They have, apart from being at Kenyatta National Hospital, they are not engaged by Kenyatta National Hospital. These doctors, their supervisors who are also their teachers, who are the consultants, are away on strike because also they have been denied their allowances. So these doctors are saying, now that you have confirmed to us that when I make a mistake, then I have personal responsibility, yet my engagement is with the university. I want to wait for my teacher, who is also my supervisor, to come back so that then I am working in a system under the person that protects me.
And by protection, I guess he means the person who oversees, supervises me.
So that I'm not taking another patient for heart surgery, and then when I make a mistake, you blame me, yet I am engaged by the University of Nairobi. So that is exactly why the strike is on.
Okay, so it has nothing to do with calling for the reinstatement of this other...
Of course, it has everything also to do with it, but that is simply a trigger to...
Shouldn't you let the investigations be done?
No, Kenyatta has proven beyond any reasonable doubt that they will take responsibility on the registrar. So the registrar is saying, now that you have proven with this one case that you will take responsibility on me, I also want to be under the person who called me in this university to study.
Okay. They are twofold. It's twofold, that's what you mean.
Okay.
But I was specifically asking you about this other person you want reinstated, yet you're calling for an audit, and you're saying an audit is important.
But exactly, because then when the audit comes, then...
Why don't you wait for the audit to happen? Why are you calling for the reinstatement?
Then the audit will say that this is either a system issue or a professional negligence, and then you can make a decision on whether someone's career is liable.
So what are those systemic challenges that the medical fraternity says must be fixed for such errors to be avoided or averted in future? And especially, what can we learn from this and how to better it? Yeah.
Maybe first, if you just look at Kenyatta and the systems in Kenya, you have to look at the bigger picture and understand that healthcare requires heavy financing. So away from these people who work under intense stress, intense pressure, including the trauma issues, the suffering there is. Now, if you want to solve that, you want to look at starting from the government policy and budgeting and financing. What are they doing about it? For example, Kenyatta was built in 1980 or 81, where we were 16 million people then. That is the premier institution, still where it was. Managing now, the population is tripled. And we are still expecting it to give us that service. Look at the personnel. Probably if you went in, I've worked in Kenyatta, I studied in Kenyatta. A ward which has 80 patients and has 2 nurses, including these 2 unconscious ones. What do you expect the nurse to do? So those system issues will be solved when the government and the people who make those key decisions decide, while we are building the roads, we are doing this and that, we will finance healthcare. As much as the doctors went on strike and asked for remuneration, that was not the only issue. As we talk now, many doctors are at home, qualified and at home. Many nurses are out there. So what we need is finance, and then we build capacity. When we buy equipment, we buy what will serve us. And then we will have helped our country. And we don't have to depend on Kenyatta alone. Like now we're talking about neurotrauma. Every other patient who is injured lands in that casualty. All those ambulances you see, the majority land in Kenyatta. And we're expecting these 2 doctors, these 2 nurses to be the only ones carrying. When a problem happens, we want them to be disciplined. But we are saying, okay, discipline we don't refuse, but let's look at the system. Let's address things where they matter most. Including, should all patients of neurotrauma come to Kenyatta? should they be addressed that way? Can we look at the system and see how will it be? And remember that neurotrauma patient can be you, can be me when you've been mugged.
Exactly. And
then the other thing is, even the public officers, why should we be paying to go to private hospitals? Why should we use public funds to finance our healthcare? If they come for healthcare in Kenyatta, I'll tell you within a week,
systems
will change.
That's true.
Okay.
I think the actuary has clearly mentioned it. For me, again, looking at the issues that we've been talking about for a long time, and one of the things that are really good and that I don't want us to miss is the opportunity that we have. We have very few opportunities when the public is so outraged with the healthcare system that should be the moment for change. But then the moment for change will not come if we direct the outrage on the wrong thing, or then we miss the opportunity to look at the solutions. However grave the mistakes is, and we agree that there was a medical error.
Yeah.
What we are saying is that the medical error is not medical negligence. There's a big difference. So there's a medical error and there's a mistake, and it's very costly to the patient. And we do say acknowledge that this error should not occur, and it should not occur. But we are also saying that this is not negligence on a particular professional. That is what we are saying. So those two things are different, and I think that's where we are missing ourselves with the public. So the public are saying that someone made this mistake, that someone should be liable. We are saying a mistake occurred. It is not because someone made it, and therefore you cannot hold anyone liable. But I think what we agree...
It's not because somebody made it deliberately.
Deliberately, yes. Exactly, that it's not, it was with the best intent. So, but what we are saying, and I know this may not be listened to right now, but the best thing that we can do right now with this outrage, and because the doctors are mad, they are on strike actually at Kenyatta National Hospital. The hospital is not functional. The nurses were demonstrating today. The public is mad. Why don't we try and use all this madness? There's one person who is not mad. That's the government.
The government has taken action.
The action that we're saying, we are removing individual. Remember, if you get the same problem tomorrow and go to Kenyatta, it's possible for you to go through the same.
Let me just let me just finish. So they are not mad. So that's why they are trying to apportion blame, and they are trying to apportion blame because it is the simplest of the things to do.
Okay.
Because the hardest of the things to do is to actually solve the issues that we are calling systemic, but that are not really so systemic. So it's just to do an audit of this hospital, and we are just talking about an audit because something occurred that is wrong. But otherwise, we know these things that are wrong. I hear there are
so many other problems
which we have tabled, and we as a union can table all these issues again, this so-called audit, and we can table it again and say, what is the issue? The issue number one is underfunding. Number two is corruption. Number three is political interference. Number four is understaffing. He just mentioned 1,000 doctors are out. One patient, one nurse to 40 patients. So all these things must be looked at. So if however many people you sack in this system, tomorrow a patient will go to Kenyatta. And the last thing I want to say just before is that the people who come to Kenyatta are people who really need Kenyatta National Hospital. They must come there.
They don't have a choice.
They don't have a choice.
Right.
And I think even as we discuss here on Big Question and everywhere else, and on Twitter and on Facebook, we must remember, someone will wake up tomorrow with no choice and go to Kenyatta. So we better be making that hospital good, apart from getting mad at it.
All right.
Yeah.
We run out of time, but I'll ask this final question now that you brought it up. You're saying the government is not as angry as the rest.
Yes.
We saw the Cabinet Secretary take action against CEO Lily Koros and the Deputy Bernard Gidai, sent on compulsory leave. In your opinion, was that the right thing to do? And it has taken a political twist now because some MPs are now even calling for the impeachment of the CS. They are not happy with what happened. They are saying Koros was sacrificed, and they are pointing to a trend of bad publicity at the Kenyatta National Hospital that, in their opinion, could only have been planned. I don't know what you think about that.
Well,
maybe before he mentions, let's focus on the issue. It's healthcare and surgical care. If you went to audit these issues properly and follow due process, it's very easy then to apportion culpability or responsibility, whether it's on the person who did the x-rays, whether it's on the person who labeled, whether it's in the theater, whether it's at the top level. If you follow that process, whoever complains, you always refer them to that audit process. So in my view, understanding the politics of Kenya, this is taking a political angle because we are not prone to following.
We didn't follow the right
procedures.
So you don't think that what the cabinet secretary did was the right thing?
If she would say pending 1, 2, 3, which she said,
yes,
in my view is then they need to give the public that finding, because that's then what gives credibility to that action.
Okay.
If they do that, we are fine.
Okay.
Otherwise, everybody will be crying that they are being victimized. And then you end up with no one. Everybody is saying, I am not responsible, I'm not responsible.
It wasn't me. You know, today I was saying that we have this syndrome of it wasn't me. And I think even to our viewers, it just looks like we are saying it wasn't me. And I think it's time for us to say it was me. Not just us as professionals to say it was me, but I think the whole of everyone responsible, including the minister, to say, I think it was me, or it was us, where me may not represent herself, but may represent the government or the responsibility that she holds. And I think, for me, I want to say that before the cabinet secretary came to Kenyatta, she had made a very good point that Kenyatta should be made into smaller functional units. And I felt that that was the best comment from her. So I was looking at, you know, us supporting her in terms of trying to say, how can Kenyatta be made into smaller functional units instead of this big monster that doesn't work for anyone. I took my uncle to Kenyatta National Hospital, and I am the leader of the doctors union, and I took 12 hours to get him admitted. And I'm just thinking, what about a patient who does not know the system? It's horrible. Okay. So in conclusion, I think is to mention that we have a problem. I think all things that happened were knee-jerk reactions. From the suspension of doctors to the suspension of these people were knee-jerk reactions, which in my own opinion do not solve the deeper problems that we have.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. I will definitely, this is a conversation that we'll be having as much as we can. It's a very important conversation. As these doctors aptly put it, tomorrow somebody will still have to work at the Kenyatta National Hospital, all the politics notwithstanding, all the problems notwithstanding, because they do not have a choice. Keep talking to us. Tonight on The Big Question, we ask, could the matter that is at the Kenyatta National Hospital after the surgery mix-up, could the matter have been handled better? We have talked to the Secretary General, KMPDU, Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union, that is Dr. Omo Luga, and Dr. Kizito Asava of the Surgical Society of Kenya. Talk to us, text us 22422. The hashtag on Twitter is The Big Question. We're back after this break.